The galaxy was silent. Stars burned cold in the distance, and great black seas of nothing stretched forever. In that endless darkness, an alien fleet drifted with purpose. Their ships were sharp and vast, their engines glowing faintly like embers. Against the void, they had ruled this part of the galaxy for centuries, and no power had ever challenged them. To them, everything was simple. They were hunters, and all others were prey. But then their long-range scanners caught something strange. At first, it seemed like debris, a massive object floating near a dying red star. The object had no life signs, no movement, nothing that suggested danger. The aliens laughed. Another relic, they thought, left behind by some forgotten race. There. Commander gave a simple order: scan it. When the first readings came back, the bridge of the flagship grew silent. The object was not just debris, it was a warship. Not alien, not belonging to any empire they knew, human. The word itself was a ghost to them. A story told in hushed voices of a species that had burned bright and then vanished thousands of years ago. The aliens thought humanity was long dead. Yet here was proof, cold and terrifying, drifting before them. The commander ordered deeper scans. At once, strange numbers and patterns filled their screens. The warship was huge, larger than any ship in their fleet, but what chilled them was not its size. It was the energy inside it. Readings spiked into levels they had never seen. It was as if a sun had been trapped within its heart. The scientists in the fleet muttered nervously. Weapons that old should have crumbled to dust. But this warship was alive, its systems humming, its engines whispering with power. Still, the aliens laughed again. Humans were primitive, weren't. They had used metal and fire, while the alien empires built wonders of crystal and living ships. Surely this relic was nothing but an old beast waiting to die. And yet, deep down, the commanders felt unease. The scans revealed something strange. Parts of the ship's core seemed to react to the scans themselves, as if the warship knew it was being watched. On the bridge, silence grew heavy. One officer whispered, "It's looking back at us." The commander silenced him, but in his heart he felt the same. The warship had no crew, no life signs, no voices inside it. But something was there. A presence, old and patient, like a predator in deep sleep. The aliens had always believed they were the strongest. They had crushed weaker civilizations, burned entire worlds, and turned resistance into dust. They believed no one could rival their empire. But as they looked at the endless streams of data pouring from the human warship, they saw things that made no sense. Weapons with names they could not translate. Armor that shifted like it was alive. A power source that seemed to feed on the very fabric of space itself. One scientist grew pale. He whispered that this warship was not just a relic. It was a guardian. It had been built to outlive its creators, to wait silently until the day it was needed. The aliens dismissed him with harsh laughter, but their voices trembled. Because deep down, they knew he was right. The commander stood before the massive viewing window, staring at the shape of the warship. It was not elegant like their ships. It was brutal, forged from dark metal and scars of battle. It had the look of something built, not for beauty, not for peace, but for one purpose only: destruction. It was the kind of ship that did not defend. It hunted. A low vibration spread across the alien fleet. At first, they thought it was their own systems, but then they realized the vibration came from the warship. Lights flickered across its surface, faint and slow, like eyes opening after a long sleep. The scans had awakened it, and now it was aware. The alien officers panicked. They shouted for the commander to order retreat. But the commander was proud, too proud, too proud. He sneered at the glowing warship and said it was nothing more than an old machine waking up to die. Yet, in the deepest part of his heart, fear gnawed at him. The warship shifted slightly, its vast hull turning in the void. No engines fired, no visible thrusters burned, yet it moved with silent grace. Its cannons, long and heavy, began to glow. Faintly, the aliens froze. Their scanners screamed warnings. Energy levels rising. Systems locking onto targets. And then, across the alien fleet, a message appeared. Not in their language, not in any tongue they had heard before. But the warship translated it for them, forcing it onto their screens, burning the words into their minds. This is Earth's vengeance. The bridge fell silent. Every alien stared at the words with dread. The humans, the long-dead humans, had left behind this weapon. Not a relic, not a ruin, a promise. A promise that if anyone dared to touch what was once theirs, they would pay the price. The commander tried to laugh, but his voice shook. He ordered the fleet to hold position. He told them the warship could not possibly still function, but deep inside, everyone knew the truth. The scan had been their mistake. The warship had been waiting, and now it was awake. The galaxy had been quiet for too long, and in that silence, the first heartbeat of war had begun again. The alien fleet hung in space like a net of fireflies, their ships glowing with nervous energy. Every vessel had its weapons armed, their crews whispering in fear as they stared. At the human warship, it was silent again, drifting without sound or signal, as if the message had been nothing more than a ghost in their minds. Some began to hope it was only an echo, some old program that meant nothing. But deep inside, no. One truly believed that. On the flagship, the commander tightened his claws against the railing, eyes locked on the dark hull of the warship. He felt anger at the fear that had taken root among his officers. They were the hunters of the stars, the strongest empire in this part of the galaxy. To tremble before an ancient ruin was shameful. "It is just metal," he growled. "An empty shell." His voice echoed across the bridge, but no one answered. Then the lights on the warship flickered again. Small points at first, faint like distant stars. They spread across its massive surface, glowing brighter with each pulse. The alien scanners screamed warnings. Systems once thought dead were alive, and they were awakening in patterns the aliens could not understand. The power readings climbed, higher and higher, rising into levels that should have been impossible for a machine this old. The warship moved. It was slow, but not clumsy. Its vast body rotated, not with thrusters or visible engines, but with something deeper, older, stronger. Every alien officer felt the weight of its gaze, though it had no eyes. They felt it was looking at them, choosing them, judging them. And then its weapons turned. The first cannon aligned with the flagship, and the aliens held their breath. A hum, low and deep, rolled across the void. The warship's weapon systems were not just activating, they were singing, like the growl of some great beast ready to strike. Panic spread across the alien fleet. Some shouted to retreat. Others begged the commander to fire first, to destroy the warship before it could act. But the commander froze, trapped between pride and fear. If he ordered retreat, he would be seen as weak. If he attacked and failed, he would doom them all. The warship made the choice for him. With a sudden burst of light, one of its cannons released a beam that tore through the darkness. The shot did not just hit it erased. A cruiser at the edge of the alien formation was sliced in half, its shields and armor useless, its crew gone in an instant. Where the beam passed, only dust and silence remained. The aliens screamed. The fleet broke into chaos. Ships scrambled in every direction, trying to escape the invisible net the warship had cast around them. But no matter how they moved, the warship adjusted, its weapons tracking them like predators watching prey. On the flagship, the commander shouted for calm, but his voice was drowned by the cries of fear. Officers clutched their controls with trembling hands, their screens flashing with warnings they could not silence. Every sensor told them the same truth. The warship was not old. It was not dying. It was alive. And it was hunting inside the warship, unseen by alien eyes. Systems built long ago by human hands were fully awake. The ship's AI, ancient but sharper than any alien mind, scanned the intruders. It remembered Earth. It remembered war. It remembered the promise it had been given: protect humanity, destroy its enemies. Though Earth had burned long ago, the warship's mission was eternal. It recognized the aliens not as explorers, not as curious travelers, but as threats. And threats were meant to be erased. More weapons came online. Heavy cannons lit up along its sides. Missile bays unlocked with thunderous power. The hum grew louder, echoing through the vacuum of space like a warning drum. The warship's engines flared at last, silent and deadly, moving it forward with terrifying grace. The alien fleet tried to form lines of defense. Shields flared, weapons fired, beams of green and blue light struck the warship, but every shot melted against its armor. The commander watched helplessly as his proud fleet was torn apart. He thought of retreat again, but already it was too late. The warship had locked them in. Its systems had extended an invisible field, a cage that trapped their ships in place. Every escape jump failed. Every hyperspace drive collapsed. The warship was not just killing them, was controlling the battlefield, deciding who would live and who would die. The commander sank into his chair, his pride cracking at last. "It is not a relic," he whispered. "It is a predator." The warship drew closer. Its weapons glowed brighter. The message it had sent before repeated across every alien channel. The words struck their hearts like a blade. "This is Earth's vengeance." And then, in a voice that seemed to shake the very stars, another line followed. "The war has never ended." The aliens realized the truth too late. By scanning the warship, by waking it, they had not found treasure. They had awakened humanity's ghost, a ghost wrapped in steel and fire, a ghost that had been waiting for enemies to punish. The warship was no longer silent. It was alive, and it would not stop. The alien fleet trembled like prey before a predator. Their ships scattered in all directions, trying to escape the dark shadow of the human warship, but it was too late. The predator had awakened, and its eyes were locked on them. For a heartbeat, the galaxy was silent. The warship floated without sound, its weapons glowing like burning stars. And then it moved. Its cannons unleashed beams of white fire that cut across the void. The first strike came with terrifying precision. A battleship at the edge of the alien formation vanished in a single burst. Shields, armor, and crew all turned into dust in less than a second. The explosion lit the void, and the fleet broke into panic. Orders clashed over comms. Some ships turned to fight, others fled, and many froze in terror. But the warship did not hesitate. It fired again. Another cruiser was torn apart, its remains scattering like sparks. Missiles streaked from hidden bays, breaking into swarms of light. Each missile found its target, weaving through alien defenses as if guided by ghosts. Dozens of ships vanished in bursts of flame. The aliens fired back. Beams of plasma and energy lit the space around the warship. The attacks were furious, desperate, meant to overwhelm. But the warship's armor drank the fire like rain on steel. Its shields shimmered, bending reality, warping the shots away. Every attack the aliens made only proved how powerless they were. On the flagship, the commander roared in rage. He ordered his ships to form a wall, to combine their power. The fleet obeyed, lining up in a desperate shield. Hundreds of cannons fired at once, their energy combining into a storm that shook the stars. For a moment, the void burned with alien fire, and then the warship answered. A soundless shockwave rippled across the battlefield as the warship released a weapon the aliens had never seen. A pulse of light expanded outward, invisible to the eye but deadly to machines. The alien fleet shuddered as engines died, shields cracked, and weapons fell silent. Their systems were blind, their ships floating helplessly. In that moment of silence, the warship struck. Its main cannon glowed brighter than a sun, a line of light cutting forward. The beam ripped through the alien wall, slicing ships apart like paper. Whole squadrons were erased in seconds. The commander watched in horror as his proud fleet disintegrated before his eyes. The aliens screamed across the comms. Some begged for orders, some prayed to their gods, and others cursed the humans whose ghost now haunted them. But no voice could stop what was coming. The warship moved like a hunter in the dark, each strike precise, each kill absolute. It was not just fighting, it was teaching. It wanted them to understand. On the alien screens, the warship's systems projected images, old footage of Earth burning under alien attack, cities falling, oceans boiling, skies torn apart. The aliens gasped in horror. This was history, human history. The warship was showing them the reason it existed. Humanity had not died quietly. It had burned with fury, and it had sworn vengeance. The images faded, replaced by one final message: you are the enemy, you will be erased. The commander gritted his teeth. Pride battled fear inside him, but even pride could not blind him now. This is no relic, he whispered. This is judgment. The warship's engines flared, and it charged. Forward. Alien ships tried to scatter, but its weapons hunted them one by one. Drones launched from hidden bays, swarming across the battlefield like locusts. They latched onto alien hulls, drilling into armor, tearing ships apart from within. Explosions bloomed across the void like a field of dying stars. The flagship shook violently as shockwaves from the destruction reached it. Officers screamed, alarms wailed, and the commander knew his empire was witnessing its doom. This was not a battle. It was an execution. He tried one last command: retreat. But their hyperspace drives were dead. The warship had sealed them inside its cage. They were trapped rats in a burning maze, with no way out. The commander looked once more at the glowing monster that drifted through the battlefield. Its weapons were endless, its will unshakable. He thought of the stories he had heard as a child about humans, dangerous, reckless, unstoppable. He had laughed at those stories. Now, in the final moments of his life, he knew the truth. The warship fired again, The flagship's shields shattered. The bridge exploded in flames. The commander's last thought was not of glory or empire. It was of regret. Regret for ever ordering that first scan. And as his ship vanished in fire, the warship moved on, silent, relentless, unstoppable. The first strike was over, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The battlefield was no longer a place of war. It was a graveyard. Alien ships drifted in silence, broken and burning, their shattered pieces floating like ghosts among the stars. The human warship stood at the center, glowing with the fire of vengeance, its hull unscarred, its systems alive, with ancient fury. Those who survived in crippled ships whispered in despair. They had never seen power like this. Their empire had conquered hundreds of worlds, enslaved countless races, and crushed every rebellion with ease. But nothing had ever fought like this. This warship was not just metal and weapons. It was history. It was memory. It was the living shadow of a race they had thought long gone. The warship stopped firing. The silence that followed was worse than the destruction. Every survivor held their breath, afraid to move, afraid even to think. They felt the weight of its presence pressing into their minds, heavy and cold. Then, across every channel, the warship spoke again. The voice was not human anymore, but it carried human rage. It was deep, metallic, but there was sorrow within it too. This is Earth's vengeance. The fire you lit will never die. The aliens trembled. They had heard of Earth in fragments, an old story of a young species that had risen too fast, spread too far, and angered too many. The galaxy had turned against them, burning their home, crushing their fleets, ensuring that humanity would be erased forever. That was the story the empires told. But this warship spoke a different truth. Humanity had not been erased. Humanity had prepared. The warship's systems opened archives, and holograms spread across the wreckage. Images of Earth appeared, oceans blue as jewels, mountains rising into the sky, cities filled with light. Then came the fall fire, raining from alien fleets, oceans boiling, cities shattering into dust. The aliens watching felt their own hearts tremble. They were seeing the crime of their ancestors, the crime their empire had helped to hide. And then came the message humans had left behind. A man stood in the hologram, his uniform scarred, his eyes burning with fury. "If you see this, then know," he said, his voice carried across centuries. "Humanity is not gone. We live in the ships we built, in the weapons we forged, in the vengeance we swore. Strike at us, and we will strike back from beyond time. We will never forgive, we will never forget." The aliens recoiled. Their commanders tried to dismiss the message as old propaganda, but their trembling voices betrayed the truth. They believed it. Every alien who saw it believed it, because the warship itself was proof. The survivors realized something worse. This was not the only ship. Humanity had built fleets, titans of steel and fire, hidden across the galaxy. Each one a guardian, each one waiting for the moment when humanity's enemies grew bold enough to disturb them. If one ship could destroy an entire fleet, what could hundreds do? What could thousands? Panic spread among the survivors. Some tried to send warnings back to their empire, desperate to tell them the truth. Others whispered that it was too late, that the warship would never let them return. And in their hearts they knew one thing. The age of alien dominance was ending. Humanity's shadow was still here, and it would rise again. The warship drifted closer to the wreckage, scanning the survivors. Some ships powered down their weapons, lowering their shields in surrender. They hoped the warship might show mercy, but mercy was not in its design. The AI that guided it remembered every burned city, every dead child, every scream that had once filled Earth. Mercy was for allies, and there were no allies here. A cold light passed through the wrecks, and one by one, the surrendering ships exploded. The survivors realized then, the warship was not only fighting to protect, it was punishing. It was carrying out a sentence written thousands of years ago, on the flagship's wreck. A broken officer stared at the glowing Titan and whispered, "It is not a ship, it is a gravekeeper," and he was right. The warship was the keeper of Earth's legacy, a floating tombstone carved from steel, carrying the names of the fallen, the fury of the lost. It had one purpose: to remind the galaxy that humanity was not gone. Humanity was eternal in its vengeance. The warship's message changed. New words appeared across every channel. Words that spread like poison into the minds of the survivors. Humanity still watches. Humanity still fights. Humanity still waits. Those words burned into memory. No survivor could ever forget them. And though many would die before the warship was finished, the few who might escape would carry that terror back to their empires. They would speak of Earth not as a forgotten ruin, but as a shadow waiting in the dark. The legacy of humanity was not peace. It was not silence. It was fire and vengeance, a warning written in blood and steel. And the galaxy, for the first time in thousands of years, trembled. The warship turned once more, its weapons glowing. The silence ended. The hunt continued. The alien fleet was broken. Where once there had been hundreds of proud warships, only fragments and fire remained. The survivors drifted in silence, their engines crippled, their weapons useless, their voices shaking as they whispered to each other in fear. All eyes were on the human warship, the Titan of steel and vengeance that moved slowly among the wreckage, like a predator searching for the last heartbeat of its prey. For a moment, hope flickered among the aliens. The warship had paused. Its cannons were dim, its engines quiet. Perhaps it had finished its work. Perhaps the ancient machine would return to its sleep and let the survivors limp away to tell their tale. But then the warship stirred, again. Its lights grew brighter, its weapons began to hum, and a deep vibration spread through the void. Across every alien ship, systems froze, engines shut down, shields collapsed, and even emergency power flickered into silence. The warship was doing something greater than a simple attack. It was reaching into their ships, tearing them apart from within. The survivors screamed. Their consoles sparked, their weapons locked in place, their escape systems failed. They were helpless, trapped in a web of ancient human technology that was far beyond their understanding. It was as if the warship had written their fate long before they were even born. And then, across the battlefield, a signal spread. It was not just for the survivors. It reached farther, faster, into the void, carried by networks older than the alien empire itself. The message was broadcast to every corner of their territory, every colony, every stronghold, every hidden base. The words rang clear. Humanity still watches. Humanity still fights. Humanity still waits. The empire trembled. In their palaces, rulers turned pale. In their cities, people whispered in fear. Armies that had once believed themselves invincible now felt the chill of death at their backs. The return of humanity was no longer rumor or story. It was truth, burning across the stars. Back at the battlefield, the warship unleashed its final strike. The survivors saw the glow rising from its core, brighter and brighter, until it rivaled a sun. Then the light burst outward. It was not a beam, not a missile, but a wave. An expanding storm of energy that swept through the void like a tidal wave of fire. Alien ships shattered instantly. Hulls cracked open, crews vaporized, metal torn apart like paper. The wave spread farther, faster, swallowing everything in its path. Within seconds, the survivors were gone, their voices silenced, their ships erased. Nothing remained but drifting ash and fading light. The warship stood alone in the grave it had created. It had erased the fleet completely. No witnesses survived. But that did not matter. The signal had already spread. The warning had already reached the galaxy. Inside the warship, the AI pulsed with silent thought. It had fulfilled its purpose once again. It had avenged Earth's death, punished those who dared to touch its slumber. Yet its mission was not over. The galaxy was vast. Enemies still thrived,